Should you be worried about Juju SmithSchuster, and who should you promote from your bench into your starting lineups this week? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Magdziuk.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Welcome into the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, everybody. I am Kate Magdziuk, senior content creator at The Gaming Society. And of course, as always, I am joined by my lovely co-host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow him over on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And of course, follow his work, Mr. PFF, where he is just giving out the best bets of the week. Just really solid content that you must check out. Marcus, we're headed into week 2. We have Thursday night football in the books, and I'll be honest. I don't know what I expected last night, but week 2 Thursday night football, Chargers Chiefs, that was not quite as what I expected. I don't know what I expected.
Yeah, me neither. But Justin Herbert, might be my favorite player in the league right now. Well, what a player, Kate. Like, he's not even able to really run the ball because he's got this banged up rib. He can't even really throw it, and then on a 4th and 2, just dime 50 yards down the field. I love him so much. He's so much.
But like,
go ahead.
The crazy thing is, Marcus, that what a baller. I think that's the bigger takeaway. I love watching Justin Herbert play. Although I do think it's difficult to talk about Justin Herbert and how funny he is to play, or how funny he is to watch, when you're contrasting him with Patrick Mahomes, who is also just so fun to watch and makes just the most ridiculous throws on a week-to-week basis that defy gravity, make you think he's literally an alien from a completely different planet. Like, we saw 2 of the best young quarterbacks in football go head to head, but let's talk about the Chargers first, because I feel like that's the natural segue here. You teased it a little bit before. We had some ups and downs for the Chargers last night. Ups, we've obviously got Mike Williams, just absolutely, I don't know, was a freak of nature. Like, after disappearing in week 1, 10 targets, 8 receptions, 113 yards in one of the sickest touchdowns I can remember in a long time. Almost a perfect passer rating when targeted. Like, he looked incredible, and just, no questions asked, wide receiver 1. Now, other areas on the field that I think we should talk about. Let's start with Justin Herbert. You teased the rib injury. Did not look fantastic, but what a baller this dude is to be in that much significant pain, still be taking hits. Like, that offensive line saw him injured and did not seem to have any hurry or like sense of urgency in helping keep his quarterback upright. Like,
yeah. It does seem like he's going to be okay. We haven't heard anything lately. I know Brandon Staley said after the game that they think he'll be okay. He might just have.
I doubt it.
Yeah, we'll see. He was in a lot of pain. I should also just mention really quickly about Mike Williams. The guy is a monster. He's just like having a big tree out on the field. Speaking of trees, I got people cutting trees down next to me. So if you hear some buzzing in the background, that's what it is. But
what a segue there, Marcus.
We knew Mike Williams was going to be in for a big game, right? No Keenan Allen. He's dominated the Chiefs before. This is where you want to see him thrive.
What is pretty incredible, Mike Williams, out of every single receiver on the field, averaged the fewest yards of separation among any receiving person, any person on the field that was a target.
The other thing, he could have easily had 2 touchdowns in this game. He had a long reception that came up at the 1-yard line, and then a couple of drives later, he made that ridiculous one-handed catch. Like, this very well could have been an 8 for 115 and 2 touchdown game. But I think some people were a little bit nervous after week 1. Don't be. This is why the Chargers paid him $20 million a year. It's because he's really good. He's really good.
Hashtag really good. Now, I'm a little bit more concerned about the potential for missed time with Justin Herbert. I feel like we hear this a lot with rib injuries. A lot of times it's a pain tolerance, but with the amount of times that Justin Herbert took hits, even after that injury, I think we have to be a little bit concerned that
the good news is that they do have the little extra break now, right? They've got 10 days until their next game. Even if he does miss some time, I would only think it's going to be a game, right? Like 17 days until their next game after this one. I think they play Houston. I don't imagine he'll be out for a long time, so I think they'll be okay. Can I get your thoughts on one more player quickly before we go or we move on?
Let's hear it.
Gerald Everett. I know some people are a little down on Everett after, maybe being the reason why the Chargers lost that game because he ran a terrible route, in the end zone. But I thought he looked really good. 6 for 71, making plays after the catch. I think he's going to be a real thing. Like, I think Gerald Everett's going to be somebody that's consistently, so we want somebody we want in our lineups because he's so good after the catch. It seems like they've got a role for him. Why couldn't he be like the tight end 8 this season?
I think that's totally within the realm of possibility. My biggest sort of wait and see is definitely boiling down to what does he look like with a fully healthy Keenan Allen in the lineup, and does that look, similar to what we've seen from him so far? Like, do we see any downgrade in his performance or his target rate when we have Keenan Allen? Maybe. Don't quite know just yet. But one more quick thing I want to talk about. Austin Eckler, back-to-back games where he has not looked great as a rusher, Marcus. 2.5 yards per rush attempt last week. In week 2, 2.79 yards per rush attempt. Hasn't eclipsed 40 rushing yards in either of his 2 starts. He is involved as a receiver, so that's kind of buoyed him and saved his day. But no touchdowns yet this year. Hasn't eclipsed 100 scrimmage yards yet. Any concern there from Austin Eckler, or do you think we're just, again, be patient and it will come?
None, for a couple of reasons. Number one, across the NFL, yards per rushing attempt are always down in September. It's one of these things that it always goes up as the season goes on. So you'll see that efficiency get better. They've got a new look offensive line with 2 new starters. And on top of that, Kate, they played 2 pretty good teams. The Raiders and Chiefs the Chiefs especially, but those are good teams. They'll play some games coming up against much lesser teams where they'll be able to stick to the run. I'm not worried about him at all for a couple of reasons, but I mean, he's also not hurting you in your lineup, right? If he's getting 9 for 55 every week in the receiving game, you're not going to be all that concerned that he's only averaging 2.8 yards per carry.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
All right, let's move on to the Chiefs. But before we do that, I want to tell you about Turo. Turo is the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the US, Canada, or the UK. Book a spacious SUV or a minivan for a family road trip. Get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday. Find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and just need to get from A to B. Test drive that new electric vehicle that you've had your eye on to see how it fits in your everyday life. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms and conditions apply. Ditch boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. I think I'm going to book like a super nice luxury car for the Fantasy Football Expo next year, just to show off a little bit. I think that's the plan. All right, let's do the Chiefs. We teased this at the beginning of the show. Okay, are you worried about Juju SmithSchuster at all?
Definitely. I mean, I'm definitely worried, but Marcus, I think the bigger takeaway is I'm just worried about all of the receiving options here.
All of them, except for
every
Travis
single
Kelce.
one.
That's the only one I'm not worried about.
Yes, I couldn't give a rat's behind with any concern for Travis Kelce. Like Travis Kelce always doing Travis Kelce things, but Marcus, like we see Juju on the field, ran 29 routes on Thursday Night Football, only commanded 3 targets, 3 receptions, 10 yards. Now, I will say there were a lot of moments where Juju was open and Patrick Mahomes couldn't get the ball to him. A lot of that came down to the offensive line breaking down. And so I think there were more opportunities when you actually watched the game to get him involved. But the offensive line didn't necessarily always hold up on that end.
Do you know what was really quickly? Do you know what's interesting about Juju in this game is that he basically split his snaps from the slot and out wide. 22 snaps in the slot, 21 out wide. Never had a target when he was playing as a outside wide receiver. If you're a Juju like fan owner, you don't want to see him playing on the outside. That's just not where he thrives. I want to see him in the slot, and with the Chiefs kind of splitting time with him in the slot and the outside, it makes me nervous.
Well, and Marcus, the interesting thing too is like I mentioned, he was open yesterday. Looking at the average yards of separation for all of these pass catchers, outside of Travis Kelce, there was nobody who was averaging more separation on that field among the wide receiver group than Juju Smith-Schuster. And I think like I'm being patient. I'm not having him in my starting lineup if I can help it at this point. I'm not having any Chiefs wide receivers starting in my fantasy football lineup if I can help it. But I do think that watching the games, there are reasons to be optimistic that the Chiefs might fix that usage and might say like, okay, we see Juju open. We need to find ways to get him the ball. This is a smart coaching staff, but like it's wait and see time.
If you had to start a Chiefs receiver with confidence right now, is who would you pick?
I'd probably say Mecole Hardman, though TBD suffered what was like a heel injury. Not quite sure. He was hobbling in and out and came back in, and then he came back out. So I'm kind of curious to see what the status of that is going to be moving forward when he's not playing through a crap ton of adrenaline. And I'm waiting on that. But maybe the more interesting storyline here, Marcus, is the Chiefs running backs, which Clyde EdwardsHelaire. Let's talk about Clyde EdwardsHelaire because everybody was extremely down on Clyde EdwardsHelaire coming into this year. I was a little higher on him because I liked the potential here for him. I liked the fact that he's coming into the season a bit healthier than he was last year. Remember, he had gallbladder surgery just ahead of the 2021 season. It dropped a ton of weight. Was not, I'm going to guess, probably not conditioned in the same way that he should, but 8 rush attempts, 74 rushing yards, and just looked like an absolute stud. Was involved as a receiver. Yeah, ran 13 routes, had 4 catches, 44 yards. Like, I think we might be in a place where Clyde EdwardsHelaire is a weekly play, and I think you should feel good about that.
It's tough for me with him because I've got similar thoughts to Josh Jacobs as well, where both of these guys have looked really good early in the season, but if they're only getting Clyde EdwardsHelaire had 10 touches last week, 12 this week. If they're only getting 12 touches, it's really hard to trust those guys to be fantasy relevant every week because they've got to rip off a long run or they've got to score a touchdown. I would say I'm encouraged, but I'm not to the point yet where I think Clyde EdwardsHelaire is a every week starter.
But look at the beauty of that. Just 12 touches. But I mean, like if you're in a full PPR league and you've got those four extra points there, you've got 15 points and you don't even have a score. So I do think the ceiling for Clyde EdwardsHelaire is quite high this season. And
if he could get that number up to like 15, which I don't think is unreasonable, right? You just add a couple more rushing attempts and a target or something. Then I think we get really excited. But I just have concerns about him being able to maintain this efficiency on so few touches.
The interesting thing, though, Marcus, is that it's like, who's touching the ball for the Chiefs? Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
feel like anybody is touching the ball a whole lot. And maybe that's what this offense looks
Well,
like.
and to be fair, in this game, the Chiefs had several 3-and-outs on offense. They also had one of their scores. They scored 27 points in this game, but 7 of those points came on a pick six. I just think there's going to be games where they have much more success on offense. They're moving the ball in general. So I think, to your point, there's going to be games where he gets more touches. They just have to.
Yep, I absolutely agree.
All right. I think we've covered the Chiefs quite a bit. We want to say anything about
Too
Mahomes?
much.
I mean, Mahomes, he was fine. Like,
Yeah.
from a fantasy perspective, he was fine. From a real life perspective, like, certainly wasn't his best game. He had maybe 3 interceptions that could have been picked off, a couple drops in this one, but fine. 235 yards and 2 touchdowns. You'll take it. Not a league winning day, but you'll take it. All right. Let's get to promotion commotion, Kate. But before we do that, I want to tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Find all of the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including week 2 lines that are already out. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite sports and events, including NFL, NBA, MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, promotion commotion, Kate. Who you got?
I'm gonna kick this one off with an old pal, an old friend, if you will. I'm going with Saints wide receiver Jarvis Landry, who saw 8 targets in week 1, went 7 for 114, had his best PFF receiving grade since week 12 of the 2020 season. He was involved. He looked great. Saints are at home this week. And I think that, as Michael Thomas continues to acclimate to this offense, we're going to continue to see heavy involvement from this other group of wide receivers. Interestingly enough, we haven't seen that explosion in the rushing game just yet from the Saints, which we know is such a big part of their overarching philosophy. But as a reminder, Jameis Winston is back, and we know Jameis Winston likes to throw the ball. Jarvis Landry, perfect guy who's probably been sitting on your bench, I don't know, for the last season. Promote him back into your starting lineup if you're looking for some flex plays, because I do think the Saints are going to need to put up some points in this one, and Jarvis Landry probably wouldn't at all surprise me if he escapes week 2 with 10 targets.
I like that. It's a good call. You always have the more fun ones. I always have the absolutely gross ones. Like, if you're just in a bind and you've got Mike Evans and you're worried that he's not going to play, or you have Julio, or you lost Chris Godwin, you lost.
I have a gross one, so don't
all right,
discard me just yet.
Mine is Greg Dortch, wide receiver for the Arizona Cardinals. On ESPN Fantasy right now, he is owned in 1% of leagues. So you're not even promoting him from your bench to your starting lineup. You're promoting him from free agency into your starting lineup. He was legitimately good last week in the first game of his career. 7 catches for 63 yards. He saw 9 targets. But, Kate, what I love, he ran 44 routes in this game. And unlike Rondale Moore, his ADOT was actually above 0, 6.8. Doesn't appear that Rondale Moore is going to play this week. We know that the Raiders secondary is not very good. I think there's a really good chance that Greg Dortch has a similar game. 6 for 70, maybe a carry on the ground. And if you need somebody that can get you 12, 13, 14 points, that's a flex play. I think Greg Dortch could do it again.
Yeah, I think that's again, you're always good with these gross names, but I like it. I like it a lot. I'm going to counter your gross name with another gross name. with wide receiver Kyle Phillips, who plays for the Tennessee Titans, in case you didn't know. 2022 fifth round pick. Had 9 targets, 6 receptions, 66 yards in week 1. Had a very just quiet, solid performance. And Marcus, what I love, ranked 5th among all wide receivers in week 1 in yards against man coverage. This week, they get the Buffalo Bills, who I think are going to be really honed in on those primary receiving options, like your Robert Woods, like your Treylon Burks. I think Kyle Phillips has a sneaky chance at getting racking up some receptions, just beyond the line of scrimmage, and really making that kind of his niche this week and taking off. And I don't know, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Kyle Phillips, again, like Jarvis Landry, had 10 targets.
Wouldn't be surprised. Still seems like a lot, but I wouldn't be surprised. I think that's a good call.
He had 9 targets in week 1. I'm only projecting 1 more target.
All right. This is the grossest one we've ever done on the promotion commotion. Are you ready?
Probably not.
Joe Flacco. How many yards do you think Joe Flacco threw for last week against the Ravens?
250.
309 yards. He had 59 attempts in that game. I just got a feeling here in week 2, after playing in a game, he's going to be a little bit more comfortable. I think you'll see a little bit more from Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore. I know the Browns have a good pass rush, but this just feels like a game in which Joe Flacco is, 35 for 55 for 320 yards and 2 touchdowns. And if you need a quarterback because you lost Dak Prescott or you were counting on somebody else, I'm just telling you, it doesn't, on paper, it doesn't look like a great matchup, but don't be surprised if this is the week Joe Flacco has a top 12 finish.
Yeah, I like, I'll give you another quarterback that I like this week too. Carson Wentz, probably. Sure. I can't tell if Carson Wentz is a grosser name or like just
they're on the same level. Maybe a little bit less gross, but they're same level.
Yeah, at least he was like named a starter to start the season, but like cautiously optimistic about Carson Wentz and the Washington Commanders. Really, threw the ball a lot, and was, I think, the quarterback 4 in week 1. Now he gets the Lions this week. Like, give me that all day. I think they're, interestingly enough, Vegas, there's a lot of money on, most of the money is being bet on the over in this game. I think the betting sharps are projecting this is going to be a shootout thanks to some not great plays on defense, and part of that's also going to come on Carson Wentz's arm. I think we gave a lot of solid options today if you're looking to fill out.
I got one more.
Okay, let's do that.
Ben Skowronek from the Los Angeles Rams. Okay. Didn't do a lot in week 1, 4 catches for 25 yards. But he ran the same number of routes as Allen Robinson. He ran 45 routes, played 61 total snaps, and against the Falcons pass defense, it's not very good. AJ Terrell is not going to be on Skowronek. There's a chance that he goes for like 6 for 60 in this game if you absolutely need somebody. Plus, I think you'll be the first person in fantasy football history to start Ben Skowronek. So there you go. You should get a prize or something.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair. Actually, one more. Now that I just now that we're on a roll. Worse. Yeah. How about Zay Jones, who had
that's a great one. Yes.
A pretty solid outing in week 1 and was super involved in the offense, like to a surprising degree. I thought he was like the wide receiver that shined in this outing. Had 9 targets in week 1, 6 receptions, 65 yards. They get the Colts this week. It's a divisional matchup, so who knows what we're going to really see there. But I do think that there's potential here for Zay Jones. Like all of my guys this week, I think have the potential for 10 plus targets in week 2. And I don't know. I'm liking all these options that we threw out there.
That one's not great. Do you know in the last 8 games that Zay Jones has played in with the Raiders and the Jags now, he's averaging like 55 receiving yards a game on 5 catches.
That's solid.
Yeah,
that's really solid.
Yeah, and the thing is, he's got some major touchdown regression coming because since week 3 of last year, he has 77 targets and 0 touchdowns. There's just going to be one of these weeks where he gets 2 touchdowns on 6 targets. So wouldn't be surprised if it's this week. I think he's a much better player than the national perception of.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And hopefully, if you do need to start him this week, it is that week where he sees that positive touchdown regression. So we've got you all locked and loaded for week 2, folks.
All right, that's it for today's show. Thank you for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. Now make your second listen the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson, you also know him from the Locked On Dynasty podcast, give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. Make sure that you check out the Locked On Dynasty podcast like you did today, wherever you get podcasts. Check us out over on YouTube. We'll be back on Monday to break down all the action from week 2 and to preview the Monday Night Football game. Actually, we've got 2 of them this week. Vikings, Eagles, Titans, Bills. Follow Kate on Twitter at FFBallBlast. I am at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you guys right back here on Monday.